Boom, we're recording. So, I think yeah, like we were finishing off when I wanted to actually hit record, and we were just talking about changes. You have a dog in the background?
My landlady's dog is out in full force today.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, with this sheltering in place, the coyotes are back. I can hear the coyotes out in the hills
right.
lately, just in general.
Oh, I was like, oh my god, I
But
could,
a little while ago, so the dog is bonkers
yeah,
today.
I could
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
So yeah, we were talking about, yeah, we were talking about changing and working through different phases of life and like how you find it essential to like do work, right? And
Yeah.
you know, in our and we initially met. I think we started talking about your trip to Africa,
Hmm.
and now that I think about it, we were talking about uncertainty before, and like how right now uncertainty is like something really new for you in terms of like being cool with it.
Hmm.
So I think it's a yeah. Maybe let's start with that. Um, let's start with that trip to Africa. Maybe what it kind of what that was like. Because I think I read on your website you were talking about like that was not normal for you.
No.
Go to Africa, and I think it was for an uncertain amount of time. There wasn't
Yeah.
a specific time frame. So yeah,
Hmm.
talk about yeah what brought you to Africa, and then yeah go from there.
Yeah. So, um, I had kind of come to this place in my life where I like looked up one day and noticed that there was all this open space. Like I just graduated from college, a relationship that I'd been in for a few years had ended, a job that I'd been at for like 4 years was coming to an end. There were all of these things that were these sort of ways that I was identifying that were closing and ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been doing a bunch of work on self and like my identity and making like amends to myself for all of the really poor ways that I treated myself in the past, and just like self-hatred and self and like shame and self-loathing that I had kind of just swam in for a long time in earlier life. And so it's funny, I actually was on a blind date with somebody who was a life coach. And so we were like just chatting, and he was like, if you had a year to live, what would you do? And I was like, I would travel the world and hold babies. Because I joked about that with people. Like I was like, haha, like if I could do anything, I would just like travel the world and hold babies. Cause I know I've actually don't like traveling. I had never traveled, but for some reason that was in my mind. And he was like, so why don't you do that? And I was like, well, cause it's not time yet. And he's like, well, why isn't it time? And I was like, huh, why isn't it time? And so like that conversation, because I already was in this place of kind of what am I going to bring into my life next,
Yeah.
just snowballed. And I knew I wanted to go to West Africa specifically because that's, we don't obviously know exactly where, but like I know that's where my dad's side ancestors are from.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted to do some sort of volunteering work with children. I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. And so I just started doing a bunch of research and like talking about it and kind of making myself accountable to the people in my life that like, I want to do this thing. I want to go to West Africa and I want to hold babies. And I don't know what that means. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. And like, but that's kind of what I'm being called to do. And so, yeah, I did a bunch of research on, because I do know that like ecotourism and volunteer tourism has become really popular. And in a lot of those organizations, you can be doing more harm than good. You may be taking jobs from local people. You may be, yeah, there's a lot of things that you could be doing. And so I did research and did the best that I could to pick an organization that was hopefully helping more than harming. Um, and yeah, and I like bought a one-way ticket to Ghana and like had an organization to work with, and then like that was kind of all I knew. And so from the day that I had the conversation to the when I left was I think 4.5 months, because it just happened. Like it was as soon as I said the words and as soon as I set the intention, I mean, like the stones to the path just laid out in front of me in a way that I've actually never experienced before. It just was this like really clear being called towards, and so I followed it. Like I don't really have the choice to not follow it. Like when I start being called, there's only so long I can go without having to go towards whatever that thing is.
Did you go with anyone, or did you go solo?
No, I went solo. And
Oh,
I've also, so yeah, so like my first solo trip, I'd never traveled outside of the country alone. The only other time I went was like I went to Mexico at, you know, as a child with family, but I like hadn't even traveled internationally really before.
hmm.
And so it was a really big thing. I, yeah, was not a traveler. My best friend studied abroad for a year in Spain, and I remember being like, I'm so proud of you. I'm really glad that's not my calling. That sounds terrifying. And then it was like, ooh, like I guess it is.
What
Uh,
aspect, what aspect of being overseas, out of the country, was hard for you? Or just the idea, because I'm assuming once you got out and like you actually went to Ghana, that you're like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be. Maybe.
yeah, it's it's that thing of like, how do you don't know what you don't know? Like, how do you know what you don't know?
Sure.
And so it was this, yeah, it was like the only way to prepare for that level of unknown is mindfulness, really. Like, there's no way to prepare for what you don't know.
Right.
And so, like, I mean, I could do research, but like, I didn't know where exactly I was going. I didn't know where exactly I was going to be living. I just didn't. There were so many things I didn't know,
Yeah.
and so like, all I could do is practice like breathing
Mm.
and being in my body and being in the moment, because there's only so much preparation outside of my being that I can do for for more unknown than I can comprehend.
So how long? So now that is was that your mindset? Were you at a point in life where you were practicing mindfulness, or you were being extremely thoughtful, or was that something that you developed, after your trip? Um, I'm just asking because I, yeah, I'm, I'm fascinated that you are able to do that, and then have such a like unique trip, like such a like major trip as your first one, right? So
Yeah.
like being able to, I think, um, black folks here in the states, and probably other places too, but specifically here in the United States, just because of the unique history of black folks in the country. Yeah, to go to West Africa for your first trip out of the country, yeah, like it could be heavy.
Yes. So yes. So what I yes okay, so yes, I had already been practicing like mindfulness to some degree.
Mhm.
I've been in 12-step recovery for half my life now. So even though my spirituality and my like awareness of self has grown a lot, especially in I would say the last decade,
Mm.
I've been in some sort of process of like self-examination and trying to better myself and trying to be present in the world as best as I could, you know, as a 17-year-old or as a 21-year-old who was also in recovery.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I already had some sort of exposure to like self-care practices, betterment practices,
yeah.
mindfulness practices. But then yeah, but when I made the decision to go on this trip, that's actually, it's funny, that's right when I discovered intuitive painting, which is what I do now.
Hmm.
I had been asked to if I wanted to go to this intuitive painting class, and I was like, absolutely not. Like that sounds terrifying, and like I'm not an artist and I've never painted, and that sounds horrible. And then I was like, well, but actually yes, because I'm like being called to say yes to really outlandish things.
Yeah.
So I said yes, and I went to this class, and it like that has shifted everything. But so I discovered intuitive painting, I think maybe 4 or 5 months before I left. Like right around the time that I was starting that conversation about going, I discovered intuitive painting, which really supported the process.
Mm.
Um,
How would
yeah,
you?
I mean, so I wasn't new. Yeah.
How would you? Yeah. So this is great. I don't think I've ever even asked you this in our numerous conversations. Uh, not that I that it not that it needs to be defined, but how do you describe intuitive painting?
So Um, I guess I would describe it as it's kind of like a meditation practice using paint.
Okay.
It's right. I mean, it's a healing practice. It is therapeutic in that being present with yourself fully is therapeutic, but like I am not a therapist.
No.
I'm not treating anyone, I'm not diagnosing anybody or anything.
Mhm.
What I do is I create a space for people to be fully present with themselves, and I honor their experience in a way that I think is not very common in other places and in our society in general. And then I like support them and encourage them to just like be really present. And so it's essentially a mindfulness practice, but it's so much more than that because of the visual aspect. I think that the visual aspect um of it and the creative aspect of it, there's something really intimate and really vulnerable that like other therapies don't touch on, right? Like it comes at things from this angle that I think is really special.
Mm.
um yeah, and honestly, I mean, I carry myself differently in the world because of this practice. I view the world differently because of this practice. There is like a way that I feel okay
Yeah.
no matter what. I feel okay in the unknown. I feel okay even in the darkness and in the shadows, because it's like a trust practice. It's a surrender practice. It's an acceptance practice. It's a vulnerability practice.
Sure.
Yeah, that then like kind of spreads out into every other area of my life.
I mean, I like the vulnerable practice because um, we need to work. That's something we have to work on and we have to develop, right? Like you can't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm vulnerable." But there are some people I think there are some folks who are a little bit better at it inherently.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh no, I'm vulnerable. Like I'm really vulnerable." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, cool."
Yeah.
And for those people, I'm like, "Wow, that is a great skill to have." I just, you know, and that. But you also mentioned something about being personal, right? And so I think vulnerability is a really hard thing to do, especially if you're um, in order to yeah to in order to show that in front of people, you kind of gotta work on it and recognize it yourself. So to have a
Hmm.
practice where it is personal, specifically through painting, is really cool. And we talked about this before when we did an event together. It was, I think it was your first time painting live.
Yes, definitely first time. Yeah.
Live, and you were very comfortable, but with that you were also vocal about like, I've never done this before and I'm just
Terrifying.
yeah, like
Terrifying.
you came, I mean, you came, like I said, you came across as like, like I'm recognizing it. I
Terrified.
yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, damn, okay, yeah, it's fine, whatever, it's cool. Which is interesting because I hadn't been DJing that long in front of
Mm.
them. And so weird moment in time to see you in this place where I was.
Mm.
I was like, ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, I can do that. You know what I mean? That's yeah, yep, cool. Um, but yeah, you had that. I mean, we had a conversation obviously beforehand, and I think we did some like brief check in. While I was DJing, I'd like peek over, see what's going on. I'm like, oh damn, this is super cool. Like, Austin was on the other side, and there was something happening that had never happened before, right? Neither of us had been in a room together. Um, delivering our various forms of art,
Mhm. Mhm.
and yeah, at the end, yeah, it was like a break. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like it was the biggest breakthrough you've ever had in your life, but it was like it was a breakthrough, and you were like, yeah, it felt good. Like I felt where I was supposed to be.
Mhm.
So was that? I'm gonna circle back. Was that how you felt after taking that first class? kind of feeling like, oh yeah, there's something here with intuitive painting, and then taking this trip to Africa.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I feel like I have had these moments where I feel like this is gonna sound like really woo woo, like
Yes,
disclaimer.
let's. Don't worry. This is a woo woo. This is a woo woo encouraged
Great. Okay.
conversation platform, whatever it may be.
Okay. All right. Disclaimer. All right. I have had numerous, or at least a few, I've had these moments where I feel like I dip into the flow of the universe,
Mhm.
right? And it's this like unexplainable, but it's like I fully experience in my being, in my psyche, in my body, this like capital T truth, whatever that is. And it doesn't make sense, and I can't wrap my head around it, but I am experiencing it.
Sure.
And all of those have been those moments, right? The first time I experienced intuitive painting, it was like, oh my, I am like right where I'm, like right moment, right time, right, like right space. Like it's like this moment of like, oh, like I am in like my flow of existence that I often am not in, because the society doesn't facilitate and encourage that. But it's this, I like drop into this like, oh, like this is something really profound, and like my something in my truth.
Mhm.
And my trip abroad, even my time leading up to my trip, of like following this calling, I don't know what I'm doing or why I'm going or how it's going to happen. It's like, oh, but like I just trust that it's happening, and like these just nuggets keep coming to me because there's a flow that I am in that is greater than myself.
Mhm.
And honestly, yeah, the live painting was one of those experiences, because that was the same thing of like, absolutely not, I would never ever do that, absolutely not. And it was like, yeah, I don't know what you're asking me, I don't know what that means, but yeah, let's do it. Because it's like a yes practice. Like amazing things happen when I say yes, which again is like super fluffy and ridiculous, but is so real and so true. And yeah, I mean, I felt again, so I have like, I'm in recovery. I haven't like drank or smoked or used a substance in a very long time. I felt high at the end of that event. I was so present
Yeah.
and like so connected to my creative process and to your creative process and the music and the energy. Like I was elated, like I felt intoxicated, and I was like, this is kind of awesome. Like it's like I don't like that feeling, it's just not something that and it was, yeah, but it was like, and there's something so sweet about that for me, that I can be so clear-headed that I feel a little high is like magical
Yeah.
and doesn't happen very often.
Um, and I, so do you think that spawns from the creative process? Because
Yes.
I, you know, I've had, excuse me, I've had similar feelings, and I think my creative expression through music has always been about, you know, making sure people are having fun and feeling good. Really, just it's feeling good. And that can be through dancing, that can be through talking to someone else, it can be through hugging someone else, kissing someone else. Like it's just about feeling good, being by your damn self, whatever, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And through that creative process, like somebody asked me the other day when we were doing the after we finished doing the live event, uh, uh, like, oh man, like how was it last night? And I was like, yeah, man, I ended up, spinning for like 5.5 hours. They're like, what? And I was like, yeah, 5.5 hours. And to me, I recognize 5.5 hours is a long time. Uh, I can't tell you where the time goes. I never like I wasn't on any regiment, so there wasn't any set time where it's like you need to stop.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you get lost. I get lost. I'm like,
Mhm.
I just want to make sure I'm that. No, it's not even I want to make sure. I'm so involved, and you describe it flow. I'm in flow, and there's nothing there's nothing else really going on. And it's been interesting to develop this creative process, because through the creative process, I've started to, I don't, again, I don't want to use the word define, but I just have more curiosity about, like, yeah, again, to add to your woo woo, is like love.
Mhm.
There's something there within the creative process
Mhm.
where you do embark on love. And I don't know if I don't know I don't know what it is. I haven't I haven't dove in enough to understand what about the creative process is making me feel this way. Um, but yeah, when you talk about being elated and just like I'm on a high. Well, someone asked me, they're like, were you drinking? Were you on anything? And I was like, I think I had a drink. I mean, I got a couple of drinks, but I mean, when I say a couple, like 2 drinks, but no, I don't need that. And not to say that if I had more, that there's something wrong with that. But
Right.
honestly, when I don't really want to. Like, I get what I need from expression, from my creative
Mhm.
expression, which is DJing. So yeah, that's what. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, totally. And same that night, right? I wasn't doing a ton of, I don't think I was doing a ton of drinking or using substances. Yeah, it's such a great feeling to have when you're like,
Mhm.
wow, okay. So it almost makes you think like, well, what else is there? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what else? What? Because I think we can agree that we both only started to scratch the surface of our creative expression.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, I again, I'm going to circle back to this trip to Africa, because you mentioned it on you mentioned it on your website,
Mhm.
and I would assume you wrote that because it was important to you, right?
Mhm.
You wanted to
Mhm.
share that. I think you did a trip to. Did you go? Did you go to West and East Africa?
I did.
Okay, so yeah, we. Well, I almost went somewhere, and then I was
Yeah.
like, I gotta let people know about Amy. Amy, who are you? So yeah, did you start off in Ghana?
Yes. So yeah. So I flew to Ghana. I was there for 4 months.
Okay.
I spent like 3 months volunteering, and then I spent a month just kind of traveling around the country and doing more touristy type stuff.
Hmm.
And then I flew to Kenya,
Okay.
and I was in Kenya for about 2 months. I was in Nairobi staying with a friend for about 3 weeks, and then I was in Mombasa on the coast in a hostel for like I think almost 4 weeks, and then I went down and traveled with some people. Actually, the recovery community is actually pretty solid there, and so I
Okay.
connected with some people that are also in recovery there. That's why I stayed with in Nairobi, and they were having a convention just to like celebrate being in recovery and come together in community. And so I was going there for that and to connect with people there.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Huh.
So it was about 6.5 months total that I was gone.
When did you? So you went out there, and it was a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, when did you decide? Because as somebody who's, I don't know, battling with uncertainty and like this new phase of life, at what point did you say like, yeah, okay, all right, yeah, I'm out, yeah, this is working, like, because 6 months is a long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have
Yes.
been done after a month. You can be like, oh yeah, this was great, wonderful experience, time for me to go.
Yeah. So um I up to that point have always been somebody who is like very controlled. I'm like highly sensitive. I'm a very anxious, like I have anxiety. I am a very hyper aware of myself and my surroundings kind of person.
Yeah.
So I control the shit out of things if I can to
Ah,
feel safe. Like that is like, yes, please. I'm like when I started going to college, I was like I would go to school 2 days before and find out like where's my locker and where's my class. So I
oh
know because like showing up day of and not knowing where to go was like full blown panic. That's just a small example.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's just control everything we can and prepare as much as we're able.
Yeah.
So this trip was the first time where, again, it was like, there is no preparing I can do. I can buy my travel bag, right? I can get my vaccinations. I can, and again, like I knew the organization I was going to go through, so I knew who's going to get me to the airport, like little things. But there was so much unknown that it was like, you know what? Let's just do it. Like if you're gonna go big. So what I knew before I left was I was gonna volunteer at this organization for, it was gonna be about 3 months.
Okay.
And I knew, and so I left, when did I leave? Out the first week of December 2013. I knew that the convention for the recovery community was going to be in May the next year. So I was like, I know I'm gonna go to Ghana for a few months. I know that that convention is happening at this time, and I'm gonna be there at that in Kenya. And so that, and anything else is open, because I was like, I don't know. I want to, because there's so much unknown. I mean, like I can't plan. So I bought my ticket to Ghana, knowing I was gonna be there for 3 months. That was what I had planned on. And then I was like, maybe I'll go, maybe I'll find a way to take a train somewhere. Maybe I'll go to Ethiopia. I'm like, I don't know. And so it just kind of, yeah, it came together the way it was supposed to, because I was like, the only way to prepare for this much unknown is like take a breath and be in your body and like take a step in a direction.
Mm. Yeah.
Like that's it.
Legitimately in a huge continent, like where do you want to go?
Yeah.
That is, whew, yeah. I mean, I haven't.
Bonkers. It was crazy. It was crazy.
I'm trying to figure out. I mean, we're different in that regard. I love uncertainty. I love when I don't know where I'm going. I love sometimes where are we going? I don't know. Great, let's do it. There's something about a lack of familiarity. I don't know what it. Yeah, it gets something going, and whatever that is, I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can only imagine just being in a totally new place. And did you recognize it? Yeah, did you recognize it while it was happening? When you you said, "Oh, it's happening. Look, I'm like letting go. I'm taking a step in whatever direction." Or was it after you came back where you were like, "Oh my God, look what I did. Look, the something has happened." You know?
Yeah, I knew in the so I knew in the moment, and even leading up to it, as I was planning the trip and not planning the trip, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, this is really foreign to anything I've ever experienced.
Mm.
But this is what I'm being called to do. And so again, it's this like trust practice. And it's that you say that, because I now am like, I am way more easygoing than I used to be. I mean, not in all the ways, but
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Like and there is a way that I can appreciate, like, you want me to do live painting at a what? Like, I don't, yes. And so because I now have the experience of how good it feels to be in that flow, there is something that happens, right? Like traveling alone does something to you, because you have to figure it out. There is no not figuring it out, because it's just you. I remember I was in Ghana. This is actually one of my favorite moments is, so one of the guys that was there, like helping out with us volunteers, I traveled with him up north, even more into the country. I was already in the northern region, but we went up more north.
Okay.
And we like stayed in this place. It was like a room that belonged to his friend. I don't even know exactly where I was, but it was like some little neighborhood, some little village. And the women there every day in the morning would travel to the Volta, which is one of the rivers. They would take this little, I think it was, what was that one called? Remember the names of vehicles in different countries is always fun. It was like a tut. It wasn't a tuk-tuk. A king tut or something. I don't know. The front half is a motorcycle. The back half is a truck bed. That's what, right. And so they travel to the edge of this hill mountain, and then they travel down, go to the river, buy fish, and then they travel back. And so we went with them. And that was one of the hardest things I have ever done in my entire life. I did not know what I was agreeing to. It was like I don't even know how many miles it was. I mean, it was like all day. It was hours of going down this rocky hill
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then traveling through the bushes. Midway through, I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I'm really sick, which I was. So I'm like, hot African sun. I have like the flu or something. I'm hiking farther than I expected with these women and the guy that I was traveling with.
mhm,
And then we get there and we like rest for a few hours and then we come back. They get their stuff and we come back. And the way back, I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I am so sick. I am so hot. I am so tired. The more you sweat, the more the flies come. And I'm like traveling up this rocky thing. And the women are like, come on, like little by little, like, come on. And these women do this every day. They now have bowls on their head full of ice and fish. One woman had a live chicken just sitting in her bowl. And I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. Because what was my option?
yeah,
There
yeah,
was no, you can't give up in the middle. And so it's that thing of like, you just have to do it. And there's that experience of like, you have more in you than you know when you don't have a choice. And I think that traveling alone gives you those experiences of like, maybe you get lost in the middle of a city you've never been to and you don't speak the language. Well, and you're by yourself, you have to figure it out. And there's a way that like your brain works and figures it out in whatever way it does that doesn't happen if you're with people or if you have all that familiarity. And there's something so powerful about that I don't experience in my day-to-day life very often.
yeah,
That changes your life.
yeah. I think there's something really beautiful and helpful in having limited options or resources, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, not to be redundant, but creativity, right?
Totally.
You figure out
Exactly.
how to get it done or how to survive, how to cope, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. um, and that, yeah, that uh, this part of your life, this trip is kind of representative of your journey into intuitive painting as a profession.
Hmm.
Um, because I know at one point you were in a job. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily were like hated it or anything, but
I hate it. Yeah.
you were definitely in a I think in a place that's common to us all, where we're having reflection and questioning what's my purpose, what am I doing at this
Hmm.
job,
Hmm.
is it helping me move into the direction, what direction, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah, all that.
all of that. And I think that's really where, yeah, I'm fascinated because I think it's hard. It's really hard with uncertainty for us to break out and go in the direction of our creative self. Right?
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, what was that situation like? Like, what were you doing? Yeah, what were you doing at the time that caused you? Not even that caused you, but what were you doing at the time where you came to the conclusion, like, hey, it's time, Amy.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate you bringing up my trip and this because they actually are really linked together. um yeah, that trip changed me in ways that I don't even think I can really articulate, and in ways that I have done a lot of work to kind of process and understand.
Hmm.
But that trip completely changed my life, and I went there knowing that I was probably going to break myself open, but like that's what I was going there for. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that's what I was going to do, and that's what happened. And so I kind of joke with people that like that trip was the best and worst thing I ever did, because it broke me open in these really powerful, beautiful ways, and it broke me open.
Sure.
And so coming back to a country where I am a Black woman, right,
Mhm.
in the society that I live in, was really hard. And it took, like, no filter, probably 2 years for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna live in America still. Like, I'm gonna live in the US. Like, the thought of committing to living here was really hard, because in so many there we do a lot of great things. We have a lot of great things, but there are so many things that we just do really backwards.
Mhm.
And experiencing freedom from the systems of oppression that I live in here, which is a privilege too. Like I got to go there and and have a very privileged experience.
Sure.
But yeah, but to come back here and be like, do I want to, like, do I want to be here? Do I want to live and exist here? And okay, if the answer is yes, how do I do that? Like I changed in all of these ways. Again, I feel like I was in the flow of like my truth and my divine connection in this beautiful way. How do I come back here and have to, yeah, and then be in the society with all these ways that I've changed and I've opened? And it has been a struggle.
Mm.
And so yeah, so it's like, okay, so I found myself, I kept getting these jobs where they like had all of this potential to like meet the needs of this society where like money is necessary and I need to be an adult and pay my bills, but also will give me flexibility to travel, or will give me flexibility to do these other things. And it was like I kept getting into these like abusive relationships with work, because it was like this job that had all of this potential, but but the reality, it felt really abusive.
Right.
And then it just was like crushing my spirit. And so I had a few jobs where it was like a year, and I can't really go more than a year at a job that I feel miserable in. Like I try, I'm like, I know that that's like the adult thing to do, and I just like I can't do it. So I had a few jobs where it was like a year, and I'm like, this is sucking the life out of me. And so I'm like, find something else. And again, I would try. And so yeah, I think when we met, the job that I was in again had all this really amazing potential. I was making good money. What they are doing in their industry is good, but I'm still working really hard for a company that doesn't value me, right? I'm like overworked and underpaid and burnt out and not doing my calling. I'm commuting to the city to work.
Kind of safe
And
to
so
say. It's safe to say this would be uh, the standard kind of corporate environment.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't I mean, I was around creative people, but I wasn't getting to be creative at all. And so since I've been back though, I have been doing intuitive painting. Every Monday I go to my group with my mentor, who I've now trained under, and my group of women that I paint with. And so I had so she offers a teacher training program where it's a year-long process where she teaches you to be able to facilitate. And I was like, oh, this feels like the thing. Because I also have been trying to figure out, again, like, how do I bring in that version of me that was traveling and in the flow with who I am now? And I've tried and thought I found it, but it wasn't. And so I was like, oh, this teacher training feels like the thing.
Yeah.
Because I believe in this process so much. It is so healing for me, and I want to share it with people. And so I was like, I asked for the time off of work, but of course I didn't get it. I needed like a month off of work, which most companies won't give you. And I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe now's not the time. Like, I'm just going to trust that. Maybe I'll try and do it next year. And then there was the incident where Nia Wilson, those of you that don't know, she was an 18-year-old Black girl. She was stabbed in the neck on BART by what we believe was a white supremacist. And I didn't know her, right? But I didn't have to know her, right? Like, racial incidents are traumatizing for all of us. Mm-hmm. And so that had happened, and I was like feeling shaken by it. And then I was off work that day that it happened. 2 days later, and she was stabbed on BART. I was on BART commuting to the city for work. And I was like standing on the BART train, and I was looking around, and I was like, everyone here is acting like it's just normal. They're just going about their day. They're just going to work. They're playing on their phones and talking to each other like nothing's wrong. Yeah. And I was like, why? Like, how are we acting like nothing is wrong? And then I was like, uh-oh, am I about to have a panic attack on BART? Because I was like, what? This is not okay, and this is not normal. And why are we acting like things are fine? Like, they're not fine. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm about to freak out on BART. Yeah. So I was like distracting myself on my phone, like texting people, like playing games, like, just don't cry on BART, like, just get off the train, get to work. It's like, I don't want to bring attention to myself. I already am feeling really unsafe. I just get to work. And so I get off BART, and I'm like, don't cry yet. Like, get to the office, don't cry yet. And so I get to my office, and I go to the bathroom, and I'm like sobbing. I'm hyperventilating, like hysterical. And I can't stop crying. And it's like 15 minutes. And I'm like now late to work. I'm supposed to be opening this showroom. And I'm like, I can't leave the bathroom because I'm hysterically sobbing and hyperventilating. and nobody in the office is going to understand because I'm the only Black person in the room.
Sure.
And so I like text my manager, who was actually had already put in her notice, so we were like able to speak a bit more candidly, where I'm like, hey, I'm stuck in the bathroom, I can't do my job, I need to go home. And she was like, okay, meet me outside, I'm late. And I was like, great. So I like go downstairs, I talk to her, and so I like leave work. And so I and again, like serendipity, so it was a Wednesday morning. There happened to be a painting group that my mentor, she does mornings and evening night classes, and my mom was at that group. So my mom like picked me up at BART, and I went and like cried on the couch at our painting studio, and I was like, I can't wait a year to do this program, like I need to do it now, like I don't know. And she's like, all right, we'll figure it out. And because I like, the world is not okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I have found a solution for myself that I want to share with people. Like, my process has been so healing. And also, like, I think this is true for a lot of us people of color, but like often in wellness spaces, I'm the only person of color often.
Yeah.
And so even in painting with my women and my groups that I love, like I'm the only Black person in the room. And that's a very common experience. And so I'm like, I would love to be able to have this and share this with my people and do the best that I can to try and bring it to more people. Whether it's people in recovery, whether it's other women of color, like whatever that is, just try and like put the word out that there's this really healing practice that I have found that I would love to share. And so that's when I started my teacher training process, where I work just one-on-one with my mentor,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I'm not doing enough. Like, the world is on fire.
Yeah.
And I can't keep going to this job that doesn't value me, working for someone else, when I know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life.
Sure.
And I'm not. And I'm tired of pretending like things are okay. Like, I don't want to have to shut off my feelings and shut off the trauma I'm feeling to go do this job for that I don't even care about. Like, that's not what I'm alive for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like, again, like didn't have a choice. Like, once it happens to me, I'm like, all right, like let's just do it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. There's yeah, I didn't know this part about what you experienced with the young girl getting stabbed. But I do recall you being at our discussion. When I say our love lab, Austin and I had
Mm-hmm.
talk at 15:05 a year ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And I shared a similar instance of going to work not too long after Oscar Grant was murdered
Mm-hmm.
in Park, and just that transference. Didn't know Oscar Grant at all, but felt that going into work,
Yeah.
and that presented a whole different, yeah, presented a whole different day. It was not a normal day by any means, just because it made me question what what am I doing? Why is that so normal? What am I doing here? You know what I mean? One thing, a chain reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does anyone not, do you not care? Like, does no one care that this young man was shot?
Yeah. And probably don't even know, which is even worse.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
as
Austin,
worse. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, Austin had no idea. Austin had
Mm-hmm.
no clue. And, he was here during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But to not know about it was, yeah, just kind of signs, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that resonates with me. And I think when you get to those moments in time, something's got to give, right? Without
Right.
something's got to give. You're like, either I got to move, I got to leave wherever I am because this place isn't safe, this place isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
and you need safety, right? You need to feel some form of safety. Now, I'm a huge as a huge fan of uncertainty, as uncertainty's number one fan. I have mixed emotions about the word safety
Mm.
because I think it's oftentimes used for specific people.
Mm.
And as a person of color, a black person, I don't know if the word safety is often given. I don't know, priority. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, it's not a priority. I don't know if those spaces are promoted, and so it's interesting to just hear you talk about your your journey into intuitive painting and your experience as a woman of color and not being represented in that space, specifically in wellness, right?
Mhm.
I think there's tons of artists, right? Art crosses all lines, right?
Yeah.
Which is the beauty of it, right? Creativity doesn't creativity isn't racist.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Creativity isn't sexist
Mhm.
or homophobic, or you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, what is it about? Yeah, that's I'm assuming that's really important for you in your in the development of your intuitive, not only intuitive painting, but just your the development of your artist self, right? Or yourself, not even artist self,
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
So what is that experience like? Because I don't know if that's maybe we talk. Is that mainstream conversation? I don't know, but what is that experience for you in wellness? What's that like as a woman of color when you don't see when you don't feel represented?
Yeah. And so I want to start out by saying, like, yeah, I living in Oakland, living in the Bay Area, there actually are a lot of really great spaces for women of color or people of color, but it's because it's like we have to create our own spaces, and a lot of people are, and I like honor those people, and there I follow a lot of them on social media, so there is that too, like, which I really appreciate. But it's more yeah, like meditation or like metaphysical things or yoga, which is again really great and beneficial, but I don't see a lot of, yeah, like art, like the art for me, like the art healing has been so transformative.
Mhm.
And so yeah, again, I'm trying to bring this and share this. And what I can say with my experience with typically being the only person of color or black person in the room, for one, is that um it's complicated
Mm.
because I also like I grew up in white suburbia. So it also is, even though it's not comfortable, it's familiar. Like I grew up knowing how to navigate that and how to be the only person and how to like blend in as best as I can or stand out and say F it or whatever it was that I was doing to cope, right? And so I do float between, worlds better than some.
Mhm.
I also am, yeah, I am comfortable and find myself in spaces, I think, because where I'm the only person of color, because those are the spaces that I, again, am kind of more familiar with. So in that sense, it does feel complicated.
Sure.
And yeah, and that is actually even some of the, like, where some of the, like, amends to self came from, where I was this, like, yeah, like, honoring who I am and, like, loving who I am with yeah, with what my story is, like, being, because I am mixed, I'm biracial. Um, and so, but yeah, but what I can say is that usually when I'm in some of it depends on where I'm at, like, in my headspace, but usually when I'm the only person of color, especially in a wellness or a healing space,
Mm.
there's a level of safety that I don't dip into. And it can be beneficial, but there is always some level of guard up
Hmm.
because I need to ensure that I'm always safe. And when I'm the only person of color in the room,
Mhm.
usually that safety is up to me. It's not going to be the facilitator that creates that space. And like my mentor actually does a phenomenal job. Like in painting, I'm usually the only person of color in the room.
Mhm.
And the ways that I've been able to take up space and be too much, all of those things that like my head will say, she's like, yes, more, do it, which has been really, really helpful for me in all spaces where there's a way that I'm like, yeah, I'm here and I'm not going to tone it down. I'm not going to blend in. Like, this is just who I am and how much space I take.
Sure.
And that has been, again, really healing for me that I've gotten in painting. And
Mm.
I want to share that with as many people as I can.
Yeah. No, totally. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I really. Yeah, even as another biracial person, I don't think I've explored group wellness activities like you have. I've had limited in this sense. Obviously, with intuitive painting, I haven't mustered up the courage yet. But yeah, I've never really heard or thought about the idea of just having the space to let go and not be concerned. Now, I've experienced that in school.
Hmm.
Um, and I mentioned this in a previous podcast. One of the greatest feelings of going to a historically Black college was that I
Mhm.
didn't have to worry about being Black.
Mhm.
And in a way, that's I'm thinking that's the kind of the closest thing that I can come to. I'm like, oh yeah, there was a fresh breath of air once I got there because it was like there's already plenty of other things as a person that you're thinking about, that you're concerned about,
Mhm.
and being Black is shouldn't be one of them, right? uh, it is, but on in that space, whether whether large space or smaller, like the like class or meditation class or
Mhm.
intuitive painting class, whatever it may be, you need to have that, right? It's important for people to just let the shoulders down and relax and feel safety, and um and especially like a meditative practice or just a therapeutic practice. Like, how can you really open up, you know I yeah, how can you really open up if you're still kind of like, ooh, wait, hold on, ooh, I don't know, yeah, this isn't making me feel good, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I'm really happy that I'm starting to understand that same concept that I experienced in college, but in a wellness space. Yeah. So you moved on. So you said, look, I'm going to move on. I'm really going to explore the creative side of, I guess, of yourself. And you're saying like, okay, now I'm going to make some money, and now I want to make it a profession so I can earn some money, right? And that's a whole different conversation, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
Because that's real uncertainty.
Yeah.
The same way that we're saying that we don't oftentimes appreciate creativity in terms of art or painting, because I mean, there's a history of what art means,
Mhm.
or who art is for, or what art is,
Mhm.
right? And those have some, there's definitely a history of racism there, and classism, and like, oh, people who know art are, you know they're like bougie, and you could connect money, you could connect wealth with art, which is totally not the case, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
art is everywhere.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, we're creating it all the time. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot of money to create it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think you speak about, we are creations ourselves.
Mhm.
So um, how can we not make art? How can we not be creative if we are a creation?
Right.
Um, we'll add that to the woo woo. We'll add that to the woo
Yeah.
woo.
But it's so true. It's so real. Yeah.
It is. But I mean, I think that's, even when you said that earlier, because I said that on, we were talking about woo woo and more spiritual conversation.
Right.
I said the same thing, and
Yeah.
I said the same thing in previous interviews. But what dawned on me is that we acknowledge it, and the only reason we acknowledge it is because it's not not to say it's not mainstream. It's becoming more mainstream now,
Yeah.
but now we're still. I think we're getting almost. I don't know about you, but sometimes I can get a little annoyed when I hear woo woo, and I'm like, Why are you, don't act like you're woo-woo. Don't you act like you know about this woo-woo stuff. What work have you done? But I think it's this struggle. It's this struggle because you know,
Yeah.
you feel it. You
Right.
feel it. And it is about feeling. Um, it's not always about, you know, having like hard data and clear indications of things. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, you know, how are you doing? I feel good. Like, yeah, I feel good. I don't know what that means, but but you know what I'm saying? Maybe it's like, oh, my knee doesn't hurt, or maybe my shoulder feels great, or maybe there's just something happening in here that you can't see, but it's going, it's flowing, it's in sync with everything going, everything else happening, right? Um, so yeah, where did you circle back? But yeah, sometimes it's hard for us to speak that way, because people can articulate that as, oh, you think you're better,
Totally.
you think that you've got something figured out,
Right.
and that makes you smarter, more intellectual. And that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
I I'm rambling a little bit here, but I feel the same way about education. Oftentimes, we look at people with letters in front of their letters in the front or at the end. Oh, you have a master's, or you used, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you have a PhD. Oh, you must think you're smarter than me. And I'm someone who's pursuing their education right now, and I have, I've got feelings like I want to continue pursuing my education because it feels good. It feels good to like, exercise the brain and just be in that arena of learning, right? But I also know that education is not, and my belief is education isn't to separate us. It should be to bring us closer together. So whatever I learn, I should be teaching that to someone else. And I see that's what, I mean, that's essentially what I see you doing, right? Now that is hard, because trying to teach someone how to be artistic, or not even to teach them how to be artistic, almost like teaching them like, let go.
Yes. Well, yeah. And so I appreciate your choice of words and then fixing, because that's exactly it. So, well, even what you're talking about, where like art is often has been attached to like wealth and power and money and all of those things. Yeah, like in my art classes and the ones that I participate in and the ones that I lead, we use cheap paint and cheap paper,
Yeah.
because I'm not. I actually call my classes "This is not an art class," because it's not. I'm not teaching anything. I'm not teaching you techniques. I'm not going to tell you which brush to use to do a certain thing. And that, because I've taken photography classes back then, but I've never taken an art class. I never considered myself an artist. I actually identified as like a non-artist because I was not artistic, which isn't true, because again, yeah, what the reality is that my my inner judge was so loud that I didn't know anything else. And I also think it's important to kind of mention that, like, the whole thing about the woo woo, I think for me, some of it's tied in to the fact that, uh, I don't know if this is going to come out correctly, but I feel it's that capitalism exploits truth.
Okay.
Right? And so wellness, there are things that I can do to be healthy and that are good for me and that are healing. And because I live in a capitalist society, I'm going to try to find a way to monetize that, which often cheapens it, right? Or creates all these other people who just like appropriate it, right? Take this thing that's really great and just cheapen it and to share it and to get in on it too. And so I do feel like there is this way where, like, I am not a healer. I'm not healing anybody. I am someone who's in a healing practice, who, in what I do, is like, the basis of what I do is unconditional positive regard, right? Which is a psychological term, but It's that it's like radical non-judgment.
Hmm.
And because of my own process, I am capable and actually feel really at home and really connected to my like highest self when I am practicing radical non-judgment, and also comes kind of naturally because of the being that I am anyways.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not teaching anybody how to do a thing.
Yeah.
What I'm doing again is creating space for you to be fully you with whatever you're experiencing, and even encourage you to do it more. And it's this belief that I'm not only can I not fix you, I don't know what you need, and I'm not supposed to know what you need.
Hmm.
What I do believe with all of my being is that your being knows what it needs.
Hmm.
Your psyche, your internal process, every knows exactly what it needs.
Hmm.
But because of we're so trained to judge ourselves, to push it down, to fix it, to make it better, to heal it, to ignore it, whatever it is, and we're used to other people when we say anything to try and fix us and help us and give us advice or tell us it's wrong or tell us how to make it better or worse or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if when our being has the like the actual space to just exist
Hmm.
with whatever we're experiencing, and not have someone say, oh, let's try and make it better or fix it or change it or anything, and not even like give off the energy of that, our being can heal itself.
Sure.
And so my training is to hold the space
Hmm.
and to listen for your intuitive process and not the judging mind, not the critic, and
Hmm.
encourage that whatever it is. And so like I don't typically share my paintings. Like even though I am now making money, not enough money to live on, but I am making money as an artist.
Yep.
But what I'm selling is not my intuitive painting process paintings.
Hmm.
I've shared a few of them on social media, but for the most part, those are for me.
Yeah.
Like that's like the equivalent of me like sharing a video of a therapy session. Like I'm not gonna, that's not what I share. But I feel free as a creator, as an artist. I've learned to tell my critic to go sit in the corner and do something else. And so I now can create because I don't really, it's not that I don't care, it's that I feel free to try.
Hmm.
Because if there's no such thing as mistakes, you would try anything. And that's really what my process has been, of like I use cheap paint and cheap paper to be present with myself and to try stuff out. And usually when things don't go the way I want them to, which they usually don't, if I can lean into that and follow the energy anyways, it turns out better than I could have wanted because I was present. Like the goal of life isn't happiness, the goal is presence. And
Hmm.
when I'm fully present, I tend to feel joy, even in the darkness, even in the grief, because it's real. Like being with what's real is what is the point of all of this. And so using art, I feel like, is that way to tap into it. Like if all of existence is moments of creation, right? Each moment is being created new. And again, and I am a creation. Of course I can create. What I mean, it doesn't make sense that we're not all creating, because we actually are creating. Every word I say is a creation. Every blink is, I mean, everything. Every breath is creating more life. Again, like super woo woo, but super true. It's this, and so of course, like, because for me, what I have found is that art is my church. Art is the way that I connect to the divine. It's the way that I connect to my highest self. It's the way I connect and relate to people, because everyone is a creation and everyone is creating. And so I'm trying to invite people to let go of the judgy. Because again, if I tried really hard to paint a horse that looked like a horse, I don't know if I could. I mean, you might be able to be like, yeah, that was probably. I mean, you might know it wasn't like a gorilla or something, but
Right.
you wouldn't be like, wow, that's a horse. And I'm not saying that. I mean, there's skill involved in learning to do that, and I don't have those skills. And if I wanted to, I could take classes and learn those skills, but that's not what it is that I'm offering, because that's not really what I personally want to do.
No.
I just want to be present. And so my stuff often looks like a kid could have done it, because a kid could have done it, because anybody can do anything. Like, why am I so, who cares? Like, why are we so judgy?
You're talking about this structure that we are born into. Most of us are born into, And when I hear you talk about, I'm not fixing anything for you, that makes me think about other more traditional forms of therapy where, you know, most of us think about the couch, the therapist, and the
Mm-hmm.
person sitting in it. Um, and I think in these really old models or old ideas, stigmas of like therapy and mental health, that we assume that the therapist is going to fix the problem. And I don't subscribe to that idea. I subscribe to you are going to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is someone there to help you and assist you.
Mm-hmm.
Really ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
Great question asking,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there's a way, if you really want to rate, if you really want to rate a therapist on, how great they are, it's like, oh, how are they assisting you in that situation where it's in the more, again, more traditional form?
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, how is that person asking you questions? How are they driving you to get to your own revelation, or
Mm-hmm.
to for you to do the, yeah, just maybe even continue to seek answers, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
not just a, oh, great question, now I figured it out, right?
Yeah.
Take a month, might take 2 months. I would assume similar with intuitive painting. You got something out today, you don't really understand what you got out, but you started something, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and this idea of structure, Austin and I have talked about this in numerous conversations. He's also a visual artist, and one of the, you know conversations we had was kind of around the psychedelic experience, right? Where people talk about their experiences, and they're like, well, yeah, we've been told the sky's blue. Well, why isn't the sky blue, white, green? Why aren't there tons of color? Why is it that we're so quick to say that's blue? Like, well, don't you see the, you know what I mean? Like the same way I hear music differently when I'm
Mm-hmm.
spinning is the same way someone who's creating art is like, no, 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 that's not just red. That's red, pink, and black. And you know what I mean? It's not just
Yeah.
this thing that you've been prescribed.
Yeah.
And I think that's, yeah, it embodies society. We're told what to do, what's successful, how to get to success. Now, how to get to success, there's some legitimate, there's, I think, there's some skills that you can have, right? Like being disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
um, and accepting failure as part
Mm-hmm.
of, success. Like those
Mm-hmm.
are those are things that no matter what you do could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what's going to make you happy, what's going to drive you towards, again, your idea of success, that's not that's not a blanket. It's not a kind of like a what's the word, um, it's not a blanket approach.
Yeah.
uh, that's not something that's taught in school.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage that early on. um, Exploration of what read this book, because this book, similar to this painting, is what history has told us is really important,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, this painting, well, that painting doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm not drawn to it. I'm not really drawn to this book. This book doesn't give me any, yeah, it's not doing it for me, but it's important. Why is it
Yeah.
important?
Yeah. To who and
To,
yeah and
to,
why.
to who?
Yeah.
But those are questions, right? Like,
Right. Right.
those are the questions that we're not really asking. Those are questions we don't ask early on, or even throughout our lives. Sometimes we're not encouraged to ask those questions. Like, I think as two biracial black people, I think that there can be, and this isn't even, you know what? I'll take that back. Wherever you come from, I think there are traditions within everybody's culture that there's an expectation that you buy into.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't really like that. Whether it be food, music, you're like, I don't really like that. I don't feel like I need to. I don't feel like I need to be a part of it, and that's your fucking right. That's your right. But that's not. Yeah, but there is something there where like you feel the pressure. If
Yeah.
someone may not actually say to, but you feel this pressure, like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm supposed to like this, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, again, going back to this idea of like removing the structure, because I think that there is so much silent pressure, one that you put on yourself, and then yeah, there's without a doubt there's visual pressure. I mean, if you are on any form of social media, if you watch any television show, it's there.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I've had more and more insight on the quiet pressures placed on women, women of color, specifically black women, where I'm like, oh my God, damn, didn't know that, didn't see that. I've been doing a lot of reading on female college athletes and
Mhm.
their unique experience
Mhm.
in body image,
Mhm.
uh, a, almost having to maneuver the gender norms,
Mhm.
right? Well, if I get too muscular, then I'm too masculine.
Mhm.
If I'm not, I want to be muscular because I'm a I'm an athlete, and it normally requires me to have a muscular physique, right? Like it could happen, but I also need to stay relatively thin because that's what femininity is,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, I thought about that. I mean, I've had a general understanding of that, but not understanding how. Like, wait, whoa, how do you try to maneuver that? How do you try to? That's one conversation. That's just one, right? We haven't gotten into the other issues, of body image, but what's prescribed to you? What do you see on TV,
Mhm.
specifically with college college athletes? Well, specifically female college athletes. Well, I don't see a ton of me on TV. There's not a ton of representation of who I am, right? And I say all this to say this, going back to structure and ideas, or ideals that set for you.
Yeah.
Well, do what you want to do. Like, easy for me to say. Easy for me to say, oh yeah, do what you want to do. But again, that was just an example of structures that are in place, or parameters that are there that aren't necessarily reinforced every day, but they're there, right?
Mhm.
And so to have that, to tie this back to you, to have the, I don't like to use the word courage because I think we're using it. I'm going confidence and almost like I don't know, whatever that word is. Yeah, what's that word? And you're like, this is it. There is no other. You know what I mean? There is no other. This is what I have to do. I feel so good about it. Um, I don't have a choice. How did you break away? Like, what? Yeah, how did you break away from that? Because at some point, I guess we're backtracking here. Because you could have went a different route. You could have suppressed that idea. You could have suppressed the maybe going the artist route. Maybe listening to my divine self. Listening to yeah, maybe nope. No, I'm good. I'm gonna go back to safe. I'm gonna go back to this is steady. This is what people do, and I'm not creative, but I'll wake up in 20 years and then come to the revelation like shit. I did not take advantage of that moment.
You know, I've been asked that sort of question before, and It's difficult to answer because I think some of this is just like, again, we all come into the world with different temperaments and personalities and sort of ways of being. I came in so highly sensitive, like so hyper sensitive. Like my nervous system is hyperactive all the time. Like that is just the way that I exist. And so that's why I started using substances early on. That's why I found recovery early on. That's why like the things that I have done have been out of necessity because the world is so intense for me.
Hmm.
Whether it's feeling good or feeling not good, like it all feels like too much a lot of the time.
Okay.
And so I found ways to cope and function and thrive with like acknowledging what my being experiences in the world. But I don't know that everybody's that sensitive. I actually don't think a lot of people are that sensitive. So
They
I,
might be. They just haven't taken your class yet.
right, maybe.
They might, they
Nice,
might
nice. Well
be.
played, well played.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, but so I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like when I, and not to say, I mean, the nagging will be there, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna get a job that I could work at for the next 30 years and get, retirement, and I'm gonna do the adult thing because I'm now at this age where I should have things more, I should have more of a foundation. I should have more of a structure. But I don't believe in that. Like I just don't. And the people that do, great. There's a part of me that's envious. I kind of wish that I could just like go to a job that pays me decent or pays me well and save money and just like go about my day and be content.
Hmm.
And I just can't. I've tried.
Hmm.
I've tried.
Hmm.
And I can't. And so I do it for a little while and then I'm like, you know what? Let's just burn it to the ground and start over because I just can't do it. Like the gnawing at me, the knowing that I am being called for something more and something different is so, not that it's so loud. It's that it's like in this very woo woo. It's like in my cells. Like I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that it starts to show up as like panic attacks.
Mm.
I've only had 2 panic attacks in my life, and both times it ended up being these like really big shifts in the way that I was living my life because I'm like trying to like push away the calling or push away the thing and it just like bubbles over and I like my body just can't handle it. Like I don't have a choice because yeah, it just becomes too painful not to.
Yeah.
And I don't know that everybody has that experience. Following your heart, following your calling is not easy and isn't comfortable. I remember when I was planning my trip, everyone's like, oh my God, you must be so excited. And I was like, no, this doesn't feel good at all. Everyone's like, oh, I'm so happy. And I'm like, no, this feels terrible. Like I am so scared and I am so uncomfortable and I like don't understand what's happening. And I like have a really productive day and then I'm like in bed, covers over my face for a day to cope. Like it doesn't feel good.
Sure.
But it does because it's right. Like following what's true doesn't necessarily feel light and fluffy all the time. Sometimes it's like you're there's a weight that I'm carrying or something. I don't really know how to explain it. But I also know that not doing it is so much worse and feels way worse. So like if I'm going to be feeling kind of anxious and feeling all those things, I'd rather have it be towards what I believe in, right? All what is in line with my principles than not.
So, do you find a connection between, like, yeah, I don't want to say, I don't want to say failure, but I do think when we talk about changing, right, there has to be something, when something changes or you change something about yourself, it's because you come to a moment of time where you feel like you might have lost, either you've lost something
Mm.
or yeah, we'll say you've lost something, and that can be you lost a friend, you've lost a significant other, parent, you lost um, you lost part of you, which I think is a more kind of
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
profound way of framing it. Like,
Mhm.
I think I just lost part of myself. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that definitely has been more my experience
okay,
than an external loss. Yeah.
sure. So, yeah, do you see the connection between losing part of yourself and embarking on what you find to be true now in creation and art as your as a way of life now, right? I really want to get out of the habit of saying like a profession.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do obviously, yeah, you do make money off of it, but I don't feel like it really, yeah, like it does. The word doesn't do it any justice. Doesn't
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
art any justice, or what art means to you.
Mhm.
You know. So
Mhm.
yeah, do you see that connection between, yeah, I don't know. I guess uncertainty. Shit, you can call it everything. Uncertainty, um, failure, loss. Yeah. Do you see that? Do you see that there's a connection there? Do you have to lose something in order to kind of get where you are? To that rationale, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's time for me to go on.
That's a good question. I almost feel like it's mm, I almost feel like it's the other side of the same coin.
Okay.
Like, and I maybe like as a it's like instead of running away from, it's being pulled towards,
Mm,
right? So it's almost like it's not that I'm feeling this loss,
mm.
it's that I'm being called towards a oh like I was gonna say a game, which sounds way too cheesy, but it is. But I'm like, ah, but no, but it is. But it's this, yeah. Like I don't know that it's because even though it externally has been some like there's been this, it's more like oh, so like even with the trip, it wasn't that it was because of a loss. It was because I realized I had open space, and that was I wasn't feeling loss. I
Mm.
was feeling um like expansion. I was feeling this
Mm.
spaciousness where I'm like, these things are gone. And so now I get to, what do I want to fill my space with?
Mm.
And then that created this space for me to see what I was being called towards.
Mm.
And that's kind of what, and so it's this like, again, having experienced like being in that flow, like the flow of the divine, the flow of my truth, the flow of the universe, all of those woo things, having felt that level of like connection and like truth and existence, it's like I want like that continues to call me because I've been open in ways to experience it, to feel it, to be with it. And I'm like, ooh, like that feels, I'm like, that is the meaning of life, right? Like I am and that was the thing again with when I was had the anxiety attack on Bart, where I'm like, I am a living being who's not going to be here for very long,
Mhm.
right? Even if I die of old age, right? 80, 90, 100, that's not that long.
No.
And so I'm like, why am I wasting this time? Because I feel like I live my life as if I have all of this time.
Mm.
And I guess I have these little glimpses of like, I don't have that much time. Like, if now's the time, like, do it now. Because I don't want to wake up in 20 years and be like, well, I guess now's the time. Because I even feel that already. I'm 35.
Mm.
There's a part of me that was like, and granted, 20-year-old me was like not in a place. She's not me. It took, it
Yeah.
took every day and every moment to be who I am right here in this moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I'm like, but so now's the time because I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I knew what my values were. I knew what I believed in, and I didn't honor that.
Mm.
I didn't spend my time with that. And I'm like, like I can't even imagine living living for years. And again, and then that's not a judgment. Like people live
Yeah.
your life, do right. Again, this happens to be where I'm at and what I'm experiencing. So it's like no judgment on anyone doing whatever it is that they're doing. Like do you like full on.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I'm like, because I know what I'm being called to do, I just can't. Because what if I die in a year? Like, well, and that was the thing where it's like, if you were to die in a year, what would you do? Would I feel would I would I feel regret over the loss of connection with people and time spent with people I love? And I also am an adult in the world and need to pay my bills. So it's balancing all of that.
Mhm.
But I can't sacrifice what I believe in
Mhm.
for anything. And it's hard. Like, I have credit card debt for the first time in my life. Like, I'm like, the way I did it was not the most responsible, but I also feel happier than I've ever felt. And I'm figuring it out, like I've been doing a lot of work on just being open to receive. Like, what if ease and abundance could be things that I understood and experienced?
Right.
And I'm like doing this work and things are happening, right? And so it's happening at the pace that it is. But yeah, I also feel, I feel more aligned with what I believe to be true. And that always feels good.
So um, you talked about having the space and what, as opposed to like losing, it almost sounds like you were removing parts, uh,
Hmm.
removing parts of yourself or behaviors or whatever it might be. And when you're removing those, then you realize that you have space to, like you said, receive,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and you talked earlier about control being a part of you, right? Like you're like, yeah,
My
that's
baby. Like,
yeah.
like, it's like like
Talking about
it's
my baby,
perfectly tailored suit where it's like, ugh, fits like, ugh. Yeah.
yeah. And so, where have you seen? This is going to be my one reference to this point in time where we are with quarantine. I think control is you must be holding it real tight because it's gone out the window for many folks, and when we don't feel like we have control, um, and to a certain degree we don't, right? Like we're just like, hey, we've got, like, you worked on that skill when you went to Africa, right? And you continue to build on it.
Mm-hmm.
So during this time,
Mm-hmm.
not even during this time, but what have you done to address? I don't want to say issues like it was a terrible thing, but you said you were working on it in terms of
Mm-hmm.
where you are, where you fit into the spectrum. Yeah, where did that go? Did you just like? I would assume that's something that you just maybe you focused on things that you could control, maybe control in a healthy way. Yeah, talk
Yeah.
about that.
Mm, so I think that, yeah. So I actually don't like, letting go of control has been a practice, and I actually feel I don't wear it the way that I used to at
Yep.
all.
Yep.
And honestly, like, a lot of it comes from my painting practice.
Mm.
But I think it's important for me to, especially in this time, is that, like, I actually never had control.
Mm.
Right? Control is always an illusion. Nothing's actually predictable. I mean, it's not like things often, like routines, things happen similarly for days in a row or months in a row or years in a row, but like we can't count on anything. And I feel like this, sheltering in place is just like a really painful reminder
Mhm.
that there is no control.
Mhm.
And there are things people, powers that be, could have prepared for and didn't. But even that, we still would be in a version of the situation
Mhm.
because nothing is actually predictable. And again, and that, like, I think that I feel comfortable with that reality again because of my painting process.
Mhm.
And again, it's so simple that it's like doesn't really make any sense, honestly. But like once a week, every week for the last, probably, I'd say I've been going weekly for probably 2.5 years,
Mhm.
and regularly for almost 8 years now that I've been doing painting. And so, is that true? No, 7 years, something like that. I know my level of honesty. I'm like, is that accurate? I don't know. Like, yeah. Did I just lie? Yeah, I think it's more like 7 years. Anyways, for several years.
Yeah.
But the process, right? The practice is that I don't have a plan. I've never planned a painting. It's not the point. I just go and like what I tell people when they're new is like get some paint and act like you're four and just put some paint on the paper and see what happens. And so that's like the way that it starts, especially in the beginning. And so I just like put paint on paper and I don't know where it's going. I don't know why I'm doing it. It doesn't mean anything. And as I'm doing it, something will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'll feel a feeling, right? Maybe I'm like, oh my God, the way that the blue and the purple are like blending is just like, oh, it feels so good. And I'm just like with it. It's because it's a mindfulness practice. Sometimes I'm just with like the visceral experience of the paint on the brush, on the paper. Sometimes just like the colors of the dripping or I'm spraying water, whatever it is. Sometimes I'm painting, I'm like, oh, that actually kind of looks like a face, or that kind of looks like, you know, a mountain, or that kind of looks like a image, a thing. And then I'm like, but I can't do that. I can't paint that because I'm not a painter critic. And then it's like, either my mentor comes and talks to me, or I now have enough of a process to be like, okay, thank you, critic. You're on timeout. Go sit in the corner. Yeah. I don't have to be able to paint the thing the way that I think it's supposed to be. I can trust my intuition. My intuition doesn't care what it looks like. My intuition just wants to be expressed. So if I'm seeing a particular image, I'm going to paint the image however it comes out. I'm going to respect what shows up on the page. And I'm probably going to feel a little anxious about it because there is still that judgment of like, it's supposed to look like the thing I think it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But if I can let myself do it, it's fine because who cares? Yeah. It's just, it doesn't like, it doesn't matter. But the internal process I have of feeling the fear, feeling the judgment, feeling the insecurity and the inadequacy, feeling the confusion and the doubt, and giving myself permission to do it anyways, that process is then in my body and reverberates out everywhere else. And sometimes it's that I'm painting, and like I had this one painting, it's like painting the thing, and I was like, that looks kind of like a figure. So it's like this figure, and then the figure had like, oh, it wants red hair. So I gave it this big red hair. And then all of a sudden it was like ancestral trauma on my mother's side, right? And like the trauma of Holocaust deaths on my mother's side that is unresolved and painful, and I don't even really know that much of. And I'm painting, and it's this deep grief of this ancestral trauma, family trauma. And like, just because of the color red, right? I couldn't explain that. I don't know why. Right. And so again, it doesn't have to make sense, but my being wants to just let energy flow. And so I've done paintings where it's like these figures. So I've done paintings that look like mountains. I've done paintings that are just swirling paint around. And sometimes it's just just being present with it. And sometimes it's this deep emotional feeling. I had a painting that went on for months. It's like the size of a wall. Months where it was all about like, oh my God, how much joy can there be? Like everyone's like, oh, I mean, there was so much joy. It was like, oh my God, I'm so obnoxiously joyful, but I can't do enough of this neon, whatever. Like, right. And could I have planned that? No. And did I need to? No. And so it's, again, it's this thing of, if I can just trust the process, if I can go into the unknown and not have to understand it, if I can do something that I know is going to ruin my painting and do it anyways, it actually, like I said, it often turns into something better than I could have planned on my own. I've had numerous experiences where I'm like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm being told to do it. And I feel sick to my stomach because I'm ruining this painting that I really like right now. I think it looks really cool and really pretty. Mm-hmm. And I do it. And sometimes it ruins it. And then I'm like, well, all right, move on. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, it's actually this thing that I couldn't have painted if I tried. And I feel, again, like I'm in this flow because like my intuitive self is my highest self. And in this society, we put so much emphasis and so much value on the aesthetic, on our production, on the end result. And there's all of, our value comes from how much we can give and serve and work, right, and do. And so this is a process of like, again, my paintings are for nobody but me. And I might not even like it at the end, but it's this process of being present with my lived experience. And that, again, reverberates out into everything. And so there is this way that I feel not only comfortable with the unknown, but like I actually trust the unknown to often give me better than I could even plan for, because I've had the experience with cheap paint and cheap paper.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it has, again, there's a way that I trust the universe and I trust the world that I didn't before. And I trust myself in ways that I didn't before. And it's a really about like coming back to, what do I value? Right? Like, what I value is my lived experience, is your lived experience. I don't value, and right, because that's what being alive is. And so it's just this practice of coming back to that and really realizing that like sometimes life is really hard and sometimes things are painful, and like bad things happen to good people and bad, all of it. Like, that's not to say, like, suffering is real. Suffering is, being alive means there's going to be suffering, and I don't have to create more than is necessary. Like, I can be with it and not make it bigger or harder or anything. And sometimes I do, and then I learn from that. But like, I'm in this place where I just am like trusting. And so if I'm in this unknown, like, okay, I don't know. And I'm not going to know until I know. I could work really hard. I could do a bunch of writing. I could read a bunch of books to try and figure it out. Or I could be like, you know what? I'm going to sit here in the not knowing and trust that when I'm supposed to know, I'll know. And that's not to say that I don't do other things, right? But it's like,
Oh, no, I
but
agree with
it's,
you, man.
yeah, but it's like honoring the process. I don't have to fix anything. I can just be with what feels true. And when I do that, I actually tend to take better actions anyways. I tend to read more or eat healthy or whatever when I'm doing this from a place of self-love, and because that's what feels good.
Yeah, I think you have your own process, and an important part of that process is the process. It's sitting with I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, or sitting with it's fine, or
Or it's
it's
not fine, and
not
that's
fine.
fine. Yeah.
It's patience, and it's
Yeah.
mindfulness and presence.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think that's, yeah, like you said, you've tied other aspects of your life into that, right? So it's almost that feeling of slowing down. Uh, that I think that's kind of, yeah, when you talk about like consciousness and mindfulness, there is something about slowing down. Everything could be moving at a thousand miles an hour, but you're like, oh no, I'm seeing everything very clearly,
Mm.
very fluidly. Um, so with your classes, are your classes for are your classes for anyone? Do you have a focus? You know, I know that similar to meditation practices and other wellness classes that you've experienced, you know, you want to make sure people feel safe. So majority of your classes, are the women of color, is it women? How does that work?
Yeah. So I'm definitely still building up um, a group or in groups.
Great.
So yeah. So right now I have a Wednesday class.
Okay.
It's called "This Is Not an Art Class" because it's not.
Great.
Yeah. And so yeah, right now my groups are my in-person groups are just for women. At some point, as I kind of build up more of a following, I'd like to offer more groups.
Sure.
But right now they're just for women.
Right.
And and so far, I had one like workshop on a weekend that was specifically for Black women, and I had some women come to that, and it was amazing. But right now it's for anybody. I would love to get more women of color in my groups, honestly. So which is something that I'm like, again, with like the marketing that I'm doing and the spaces that I'm in, I'm really trying to like get people to come. But yeah, as of right now, it's mostly people that I know from the recovery community, more so than like that's the majority of people that come. Which also has been really great. And so so for the most part it's women. And then I'm putting together a few other like workshops that would be for like Black women specifically, or women of color. Maybe some more like mixed or co-ed ones. But because of the sheltering in place, I've moved it online, and so it's actually this is open to anybody. So it's Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8:30. And so what I've done is, so in like a normal class, I would have people, we'd do like a check-in and meditation, but then they'd be in the studio and I would kind of check in with each person and help them with their process. And because it doesn't translate in the same ways I would want it to with it being online, and because I'm trying to invite new people in also, I've essentially made a guided meditation using the principles of the intuitive painting process. So with Zoom, I have people come on, I lead a meditation, and then I have people do whatever art they're doing with whatever supplies they have already. And then the anchors and the mantras that I come back to as I do a guided meditation are the principles of intuitive painting. So it's been going well so far. It feels nice to be able to offer something in this time in the online realm. Yeah, and then once this all lifts, I'm hoping to kind of expand again.
I'm excited to keep working with you. Um, yeah, I definitely got lost in what you were talking about in regards to letting things be, and I kind of, yeah, it yeah, it's something clicked. I was like, oh yeah, totally. You just got to. I think I'm reminded of that um, when I practice DJing, or
Mm-hmm.
whether it be with school. It is about slowing down, and it is about acknowledging that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta do it.
Right.
There is this race that we all go through sometimes to nowhere. Essentially, it's to perfection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's not a pass to say that you don't put the work in, right?
Right.
To recognize that you put the work in, and regardless of how much work you put in, there's always going to be a moment, right? But again, building that skill set,
Mm-hmm.
being okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm excited, and I know Austin wanted to be on the call, but he got pulled away. So we're trying to juggle a baby and
Yes.
new gig and
All the life things. But yeah, and that's also, again, like, that's why I'm really excited about the thing that we're doing together too, because again, it's that, like, especially in this time, like, making time for creative expression is so important, and coming together in community is so important. And just, yeah, just like inviting people, like, let's just come together and like be in creativity and just see what happens. And yeah, and not to be producing anything necessarily, like just to be with ourselves and kind of see where that goes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, yeah, I've certainly enjoyed however long we've done this, and yeah, I think we're doing an event not this Saturday, but next Saturday. I'll put this
Yeah, the 25th.
25th. Yep.
Yeah.
2020, in case in 2050 when someone finds this video and
Right.
damn, so this is what people were doing in 2020, huh? Cool. Just yeah, sitting there having conversations, whatever.
So primitive.
Yeah, so primitive. But yeah, thank you for taking the time, and I think this is going to be great, so that
Thank you.
people know who you are, know a little bit more about you as
Thanks.
we work together.
Yep, cool. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Always, thank you.